Well, hi, everybody. You have questions, and we have answers. So come on in, and let's get this thing rolling. Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Bateman, part of the team here at OSTA, the Oregon State Tenants Association. And we've had a lot of questions come up in the past couple of weeks, a lot of them related to the bill, a lot of them related to checks, and some of them related to the conference. So let's start out. First of all, on the subject of checks, where are they? Here's a problem we have had. We've identified the problem and we have fixed it. So if you have sent us a check and it hasn't cleared yet, that's because of a problem with the forwarding agent we have. You see, the way we're set up, our main office is in Eugene. That's the one you see on the website, and 98% of that works out pretty well. But we now have a new treasurer living in Southern Oregon. So the checks have to be sent by mail from Eugene to Southern Oregon. You can see where this is going. The forwarding agent had a problem, and then it got caught in the mail. And the bottom line is, some of you sent checks and they just never showed up in your check cash box. All right, enough of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have a brand new address for you. And it's going to be posted on this podcast. It's going to be posted on the website. So here's how it's going to work. If you have business with the main office in Eugene, simply mail it to the Eugene office address, 1574 Cogburg Road, number 294. Now, if you're sending in a check for membership, a check for the OSTA conference, a check to make a donation, for whatever reason, we have a separate address to mail your checks to. You want to send those to 105 West Bolz Road, B-O-L-Z Road, number 1587 in Phoenix, Oregon, 97535. And you don't have to worry about backing up and writing this down. It's going to be posted where you find this podcast. So it's a separate address. Send your checks to the Bolz Road address in Phoenix, Oregon. It'll be a lot quicker. They'll get deposited within a couple of days instead of sometimes up to a month. And no more things getting lost, because there are two of us right here in this area on top of solving the problem. So the great check backup of 2025 is over. We found the problem, we have fixed the problem, and you now have an address to send your information to quickly. Another part of that, and this is kind of important, some people we found, we'd actually checked our invoice box and found that about half of you send us checks, and half of you like to use things like PayPal, Venmo, online payment methods such as that. Excellent. Won't be happy to take it however you wish to send it. I can tell you that it has been taking longer to do checks. So we will make sure that we still have PayPal active. For example, when you do your membership, you have an option to do it via PayPal. And hopefully we can begin transitioning away from paper checks, especially as the U.S. mail seems to be having more and more difficulty. So we do have online methods available for you. You can still send us a check if you want to, no problem. We're happy to have it, and thank you for your support. But let's look at some of those other electronic methods that are actually somewhat less cumbersome and doesn't cost you, what is it, like 75, 80 cents for a stamp now? Plus you got to go to the post office. So you have choices. You now have options. Send your memberships or your conference registrations to the new address, the one in Phoenix, Oregon, or do it online with the electronic options. We're trying to make this as simple for you as we possibly can. So thank you for your concerns. If you've written me a letter saying, what happened to my check? That's what's happened to your check. We did get a large bunch of them, and they all got deposited. So check your statements. You should see it clearing anytime soon. In fact, I bet it already has. That's item one. Checks. Second is the conference, and a lot of people are already registering. We're starting to see some good sales, and thank you. That helps us plan because we have to pre-order things like sandwiches. You don't want to be ordering food at the last minute because you end up going to the drive-thru. So, or sign up for your OSTA conference. Now, when is that, you query? A fair question. October 4th, 2025. From 11 to 3, and that's going to be held at the Hilton Garden Inn in Springfield, Oregon. That's on Gateway Street in Springfield. And the tickets, and I like this a lot, we talked about it and decided we haven't had a conference since 2019, so we're going to charge you the 2019 price. Tickets were $25 then, they're $25 now. Someone asked about bringing a guest. If you buy a guest a ticket, we'll give them a membership if they're not already a membership. Now, they won't be a voting member until we get the membership process, but it'd be nice to welcome them into the family at the conference. So buy a ticket for a guest, and that guest gets a free 1-year membership. That's kind of exciting. The menu has come together. It's looking very, very good. We're lining up the activities, and it's something you're going to want to be a part of, just like we're seeing a lot of folks already sending in their money. So we're looking forward to seeing you. This is going to be a great event. Okay, we talked about the conference. We talked about the check issue. Let's talk about your questions, and there's a lot of them. I'm going to give two kind of overall general answers on things that have come through, and then we're going to be starting a new feature where you can actually send in your questions, and we're going to answer them live in a broadcast like this. Now, to do that, we need you to become a subscriber. The more people that subscribe to this channel, doesn't cost you anything, just click the little button that says subscribe. That helps us reach a certain level where we're taken seriously by our friends at YouTube, so they know we're not fooling around. We're an actual organization. So your subscription will help us get status so we can start doing some live feeds, some live programming that you can be a part of. So more information is coming on that. We're hammering out the dents right now, and watch this space. We're going to have more information soon. All right, two things, and a lot of people are just not clear on the new rent. Basically, it takes place on September the 1st. September the 1st of 2025 is when the new law, HB 3054A, takes effect. For a rent increase to be valid, it must have been sent out 90 days prior to that law taking place. What does that mean? That means June 1st of this year or before is when you should have gotten a rent increase notice. For example, I got one on April 5th. Okay, that meets the criteria. That rent notice is valid. However, if you get a rent notice on July 7th, it doesn't count. It's not valid under state law. And a lot of people are trying to, we had a report that some landlords are asking people to quote statutes and quote legal information. And the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is it's your landlord's responsibility to know and to follow the law. You as a tenant are no way under an obligation to look up chapter, code, and section to share it with your landlord. That's the job they have. That is their legal responsibility. We've had some people who have tried to kind of extend the deadline through some devious tactics. So let's look at what a lease or rental agreement actually is. Okay, lease is synonymous with rental agreement. The term or length of a rental contract doesn't matter. 30 days or 30 years, it's still a rental agreement. A lease stating a rent increase each year does not exempt the landlord from complying with the law, including annual notice requirements. This means the landlord must provide 90 days notice each year, which contains all the required information, the effective date, the amount, the percentages, and etc. Failure to do this each time the landlord wants to increase the rent means the increase is unlawful. The increase amount must also comply with the law, so that any increase that exceeds the legally allowable amount is illegal. To put it another way, a rental agreement stating the landlord intends to increase the rent each year does not meet the requirements of the law. Regardless of how much an increase of a rental agreement might state, it cannot exceed what the law allows. For example, a rent increase that doubles the rent would not be legal. The landlord cannot contract out of the application of the law. 30-year rental agreements, they're valid. The landlord expressed his desire to increase rents in the agreements, but this does not amount to a rent increase. To implement a rent increase, the landlord must follow the procedures set by law. The rental agreement does not change that law or what the landlord is required to do when they want to increase the rent. Now, if a rent increase was not correctly implemented, it is not legal. Given a situation where this occurred, I'd advise the tenants, well, you're going to have to pay the amount before the unlawful increase. There is a safe harbor provision in the law for a tenant who withholds rent because they have a good faith belief the rise is unlawful. In other words, it's time for you as tenants to start exercising your legal rights. And here's another question that came up, and then we'll move on to finishing things up for today. A lot of folks have your rent automatically taken from your bank account. I'm hearing it's not a good idea to do this under any circumstances, and here's why. It may be convenient, and it may never be a problem, but it could cause major difficulties in certain situations. The recent issue of an unlawful rent increase is one example. Sometimes the landlord will simply take the increased amount without asking. We told you we were increasing the rent 90 days ago and you didn't object back then. Okay, once the landlord unlawfully takes money, it's a lot harder to get it back than if you didn't send it at all. Don't think for a minute landlords are not aware of this fact. And by the way, this gives someone's access to your bank account, and many managers have been discovered to have criminal backgrounds before they were hired. And that might not be information we as tenants want other people to have. It makes withholding some or all of the rent difficult when there's a dispute or a failure of the landlord to perform their obligations under the Oregon rental law agreement. Rent withholding is an essential right that tenants should never give up. It's best to have this option and remember it every time you pay the rent. That way you won't forget you have this power. There are more situations when a tenant should be in complete control of when and how a payment should be made. I'm not saying don't pay directly from the bank, just that it should never be automatic. Payments should always require the tenant to take positive action. Payment should never be made automatically unless the tenant stops it. That would mean a tenant would have to authorize a payment each month by choice. Better safe than sorry or lazy. And now if you're making excuses in the back of your head when they hear this, why it's okay to have an automatic payment, consider why you feel you need to make excuses instead of protecting yourselves. Just because you've had a good experience with your current manager and never had any problems, just remember it takes only one incident and you'll be very sorry. Don't be fooled. The landlords and their agents are not your friends. This is business, and the purpose is to make and take money from the tenants. May sound a little cynical, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, especially in these contentious times. So these are just a couple of the questions we've got. We're going to be posting answers to these. We're also going to include the legal sections for folks who like to have that information when you look at the Oregon codes, and that is available on the OSTA website. Your questions, we're trying to get them answered. The check problem, that's been resolved. The conference has come together, and we want to get that building as full as we did when we had our testimony in front of the Senate and the House of Representatives. I'd like to see every one of you come on up and have a sandwich with us, get to meet us, and help us plan for the next year. Remember, that's one of the events. One of the sessions will be, what would you like to see us working on in the year to come? Get those conference tickets. Remember the new address. If you're sending in a check, there's an address for you to do that. That's here as you sign into the program. And we're going to have actually some live programs here as long as you hit subscribe and help us get enough subscribers to get, I guess, certified here on YouTube. So that's what's going on at OSTA. Be safe, stay cool, be ready in case there's a fire in your area. Know your zones, know your escape routes. Serious times, these are serious things to be alert. Take care. We'll see you soon.